Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast, a podcast carefully designed to introduce a wide range of very talented and highly skilled professionals ready to share their knowledge and advice with you. Please welcome the host of I Got a Guy podcast, Michael Drelichars. Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast. I'm your host, Michael Drelichars. Thank you so much for being here today. To our loyal listeners, thank you so much for continuing listening to us. I know you're getting some great information from all of our guests, and this week really is no different. And if you have missed any of our past episodes, go to I Got a Guy podcast. That's igotaguypodcast.com. And you'll see a list of all of our past episodes and be able to listen to the episodes and get some information about the guests that we've had and see how it might help you in your business, in your personal life, etc. So lots of episodes there. And we are relatively new on YouTube as well. So you can see the broadcast on YouTube, as well as listen to all the broadcasts on your audio platforms, any of your podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it. We're in about 15 or 16 different platforms. So if you like what you're hearing, I also encourage you to share this with your friends, your neighbors, your relatives. Encourage them to listen. We're growing every week, and we really appreciate that. So this week, we're going to, like we have every week, we have a guest. We're going to talk about their business in depth. And then at the end, we'll talk just briefly about precise fleet tracking solutions, but we'll hold that off till the very end. So let's focus on today's guest. Now, this gentleman I've known for several years, and he is an accounting professional that has been in the business a long time. It's a family-run business, and I'm going to have him tell you all about his accounting firm here in the Chicagoland area. Please help me welcome Frank Costabile from Costabile Steffens Accounting. Frank, good morning.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate being here. So I'll give you a little background about myself and the company and where we are. So I graduated from Millikan University in 1993, and I went to work for a public accounting firm right out of school. So I've been in this business this is my 30th year doing this. And I started with a small firm. So Millikan is a small school, and they only recruited from outside of Millikan, from Decatur in that area, and I wanted to come back to Chicago. So my first job I had to take was in Decatur for a couple of years before I was able to move back to Chicago. And then I went with a big firm, Miller Cooper and Company, out of Northbrook now for about 8 years. And then it took me about 10 years to want to come work with my father, who has his own practice, Costabile Steffens, who started this back in 1979. And then I made the decision to come work with him because I wanted to do all the things he did. I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to, have kids and coach and all that with my kids and all that stuff too. So I started with my dad in January 1st, 2005. And then I bought the business from my dad in January 1st, 2009, in the worst economy since the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very, very challenging time at that point. We lost about 30% of our business, and it was primarily due to, at that point, a lot of our clients were closer to my dad's age, which he was about 60 years old. So it was either put $500,000 into your company or close your doors and retire. And so a lot of our business clients decided that they were going to close their doors because they didn't want to take the risk, because nobody really knew what was going on in 2009. Sure. Fortunately, though, that was our largest year of bringing in new business. There was a lot of things that I had in the pipeline coming in, and our revenue was actually flat in 2019. So we were 2009. We were very, very fortunate. I didn't have to lay anybody off. Furlough people, I know a lot of firms were laying people off back in 2009 or making them go to 80% over the summer. But we were very, very fortunate. So I've been running the firm since 2009, so the last 14, 15 years. And we've steadily grown. I think when I took over, there were 7 of us, and now we're up to 11 people plus 2 additional part-time people during the season. And then what do we do? What do we focus in on?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how what your niche is and the type of clients that you serve and you'd like to be serving more of.
Okay. So we, like I said, we've grown significantly since I took over in 2009, and our primary focus is small to medium-sized businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So what that is, startup businesses, 50, 60, 100,000 to our largest accounts are around 80, 90 million. And then we service a lot of different industries, manufacturing, distributor, construction, service providers, restaurants, not-for-profits, and we have about a half dozen governmental entities that we work with as well.
Hmm.
And then in addition to that business side, we normally do all of the personal returns related to the businesses that we do, and then some other people that want us to help them with their personal returns. I think this year we're wrapping up in a couple of weeks. October 15th is the deadline for the extensions. We're going to be really close to 1,500 returns. So this year alone, we added over 100 new people to our book of business. So like I said, we're in a nice growth mode. Yep.
Yeah. How many returns did you do back in 2009 when you bought the business?
When we bought the business, we were around 300 business returns, and now we're just over 400. In individuals, we were around 1,000, and now we're around 1,500. So
wow. Okay. So nice growth.
Yeah, nice growth. And the thing is, it's all like we don't do any advertising, so it's all word of mouth referrals. And so we have a really good client base. Like I said, the business has been around for over 40 years. So a lot of the banks, bonding companies really know us, and then our clients have been around for a long time. So when you do a good job for somebody, they're looking to refer you to somebody else.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's difficult to pick up and move your accounting. I mean, there's so much history that goes into it. So especially if you've been doing it for years and years, you get to know the business, and especially if you're doing multiple same business for multiple different companies. There's almost a cadence, a rhythm going on. And so for the business owner to unplug and start over and build that history with somebody brand new, it's got to be good for you. I mean, obviously, if you're, since you're doing a good job, I mean, people are staying with you. But I think it's easier for people to stay with you if you're doing a good job, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and accountants, we're rated like #1 as trusted advisor, so they believe in us to give them good advice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That there's no other. We don't get paid a commission. We get paid on the hours that we do and the time that we do, and so we try to do a good job. And I mean, being in the business, looking back, I've been in this for 30 years. And there's some clients I've had for over 30 years. You know what I'm saying? So I've watched them grow through graduating through college, getting married, having kids, sending kids to college. And then some of the older clients, I've watched them grow to selling their businesses into retirement, having grandkids. It's like you build a real good connection with your clients because you really care about them and you want them to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and then, obviously every year the tax laws change, and some years are more drastic than others. You've got to do quite a bit of, I would imagine, continuing education to stay current with all this. How do you tackle all that?
Yeah, so a couple different things. So #1, as a CPA, you're required 120 hours every 3 years, which is an average of 40 hours a year. Now we do a little bit more. We're somewhere between, each one of my employees is between 60 and 70 hours. And the main reason that we're doing that is like what you said, the laws change so much, and we want to make sure not only the overall like individual taxes and business taxes, but then we also look at the specific industries, the governmental, the not-for-profits, the restaurants, the construction. We take specific CPEs on those. And then when there are unique things, like over the last couple of years, PPP and ERC things came out, we take specific CPEs on that. So I think it's worth my employees' time because I have to pay them to go and I have to pay for these courses for them to get educated into these things to make sure that we can stay on top of things. And then in addition to that, I also do subscribe to a couple services. So I get daily emails every single day, 5 days a week about the federal law tax changes and every state changes because even though we're mainly focused here in Illinois, we probably operate or do people's or businesses tax returns in probably about 20 or 30 other states. And most of it, I'd say 90+% of that is due to people that started in Illinois and then moved out of Illinois to another state or moved their business to another state. And that's how we've gotten them. And then some of the ones that we haven't gotten that weren't in Illinois were because of people moving to those other states and then referring us in. And then we start doing their work in those other states. So we need to make sure we're abreast in every state that we do work in to make sure that we're doing the best for our clients.
Sure. Well, that seems like it could be very complicated especially when you factor in the 20 different states and all their different nuances and law changes and um, caveats, etc. That's got to be very complicated. Well, obviously, that's where the training comes into place, and you probably have a database to look up of all the changes every year.
Yeah, and in addition to that, we do, like I said, subscribe to another service that produces like handbooks that come out every single year at the federal and each for all 50 states. We have that as well too. So when somebody's working on a specific state, whether it's a business or individual, they can use that handbook as well, plus the other information that, like I said, we're getting on a daily basis with those changes.
Sure.
One other thing too, Mike, that I didn't mention, we'll get into our services too, but for the businesses, not only do we do the tax preparation, but we also assist them with doing financial preparation. So that's either compiled, reviewed, or audited financials based on their debt needs, the bank requiring, or some of our contractors, the bonding company required, or if they want to get pre-qualified with the Illinois Department of Transportation, they require either compiled, reviewed, or audited financial statements to make sure that the numbers are solid. So we do provide those services as well.
Okay. So so then aside from those reports and the returns, you meet with your clients throughout the year for advice. If a business is purchasing more equipment or going to buy a building or things of that, or going to be hiring a number of staff members, analyzing the financials is an important component. You get involved in that process?
So the way that we work is each client has their own customized plan that they determine. So we work together, right? The number one thing when I meet with any client is what are your goals, right? Everybody in every single business of all those 400 businesses all have different goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to know what their goals are, their 1-year goal, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year goals, so we can help make sure that we achieve those goals.
Sure.
And I always try to tell the client, based on all the services that we do, I'm never selling, right? It's whatever you want and what your needs are. So some clients, believe it or not, I meet with monthly, quarterly, twice a year, 3 times a year, depending on what they want. Or like what you said, if there's a big event, like they're buying another business, they're buying a building, they've got a life event where they need some assistance into that, then we may have like an additional meeting on top of that. But typically the recommendation for our small businesses is to have at least a minimum of 2 meetings a year. The first meeting is around tax time, January, February, March, April, when we're actually preparing the taxes. And then we need, before we get to the taxes, because I think I mentioned we do proactive tax planning. So we'll meet sometime after August 1st and before, like, let's say December 15th to see how the year was going for them, to make sure that we can implement any tax changes so we can mitigate the taxes, right? That's one thing. But then some clients need to show a lot of income, right? It's like, let's say you want to get a loan, either at the individual level or at the company level. We may have thresholds that we need to be at. So the tax planning there is kind of reversed. Instead of trying to mitigate and reduce your taxes, we need to have them be at a certain level, more for the income, so they can meet their compliance with the bank or they can get the loan that they want.
Sure.
So it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah. But I guess that makes sense. I mean, every business is different and circumstances are different in every way. So you have to be pretty nimble to work with each client separately and kind of almost put each client in their own silo and focus on exactly what their needs are, the goals and expectations. And I would imagine it may even change year to year.
Yeah, and the sophistication of the client, right? So
Sure.
So I just met with somebody yesterday who he's about 60 years old and decided he wants to change and he bought a business, right? And he's in sales. So he doesn't understand anything about the back end or anything like that. So we're going to go out and we're going to go out on a weekly basis for like 4 to 48 hours a week to get him trained into the software so he knows what he needs to do on a daily and weekly, quarterly, and annual basis. And we're going to teach him how to read the financials, process the payroll, and get him all of the back-end stuff that he needs to make good decisions, in addition to doing tax planning and tax preparation and helping him with his financials. but that's what he needs and that's what he asked for. So that's
Sure.
what we're going to provide.
So to that end, you also do the bookkeeping for certain clients. Do you do the
Yeah. So
QuickBooks management?
some of the other services that we provide is bookkeeping. We do that through QuickBooks. There's probably of those 400 clients, it's somewhere around 30 to 35 of them that we actually do the QuickBooks for them. And then a lot of them too, we also process the payroll. We have a relationship through ADP where we sell at wholesale, and believe it or not, they actually get a cheaper price going through us than going direct through ADP. And whenever there's a problem or something with payroll, instead of calling in ADP and getting a different person every time, you have one person assigned to your account, so that person can make sure it's a smooth process with any changes that you need to for that. We also do prepare monthly sales tax returns for our clients that need that as well. And then when we do all this monthly work for our clients, we push out a financial statement to them so they can see how they're doing. And that
Mm-hmm.
financial statement normally recaps the month, the year to date, and then we show last year's month. So let's say like right now we'll be doing the September statement. So we'll show September of 2023 compared to September of 2022 with the year to date showing where they've gone for the first 9 months of this year to last year. And then we'll
Mm-hmm.
also put in there any comments of things that look good or things that they need to really look after to make sure that we don't have any problems either with running the business or for tax planning issues or things to consider. So that's done every month for those 30 plus clients.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, and you mentioned payroll, and I've heard this come up from a couple accountants I've spoken with that some companies have gotten themselves in trouble with um, paying payroll taxes and paying sales taxes on time. So by having you handle that, obviously, then your clients never miss that date because you would be on top of that.
Yeah, that's the biggest, I don't want to say the biggest, but that is a huge area when we pick up a new client that if they've been doing it themselves, like they always think that, okay, well, I'll just pay the government later because it's not required. You know what I'm saying? There's nobody forcing it to happen. And then what happens is the government hits you with fines and penalties and can freeze your account. So I always recommend that even if we don't process it through ADP, that they go through an ADP or a Paychex or a formal process instead of just doing it through QuickBooks, which QuickBooks has, and it's fine. But that's on you to push that out. They're not pulling it out like one of these other professional services.
Right.
So that helps the client, it protects them from themselves, right? So
Yeah. It's well, depending on your business, it could be a sizable chunk that you got to pay the government, and if you're not forced to do it and cash flow is tight, I can see where a business say, well, I won't do it this month, but I'll pay double next month, and then oh, well, next month is a little tight. Well, I'll pay more the following month, and then all of a sudden 6 months have gone by and they haven't paid
yeah,
their taxes. And
right. When we see, I mean, fortunately, none of our clients are going through that now, but if we see that cash flow is tight, that's where we try to step in a little bit and help them manage their expenses, right? And help them try to grow their revenues and then consider alternatives too. Like if this is just a dip in their market, like sometimes things are a little slow. Like right now, the mortgage industry is a little slow, the
sure,
real estate market is a little slow. So one of the other recommendations that we want to make sure for all the businesses is that they have a line of credit or availability to go borrow when they need to borrow, because when things get tight, the bank's not going to give you those loans now, right? The
right,
banks want you when you don't want them, but when you need them, they're not going to want you. So it's just a good rule of thumb to make sure that for every business you've got some type of line of credit that you can tap into. And I also highly recommend this for individuals. So if you have any equity on your house, it's always good to have a line of credit on that house, on your house too. That doesn't mean you have to borrow it, but it's
sure,
there and it's open. So God forbid you lose your job or something happens and there's some big medical bills. Like I said, you lose your job and try to go get a loan, you're not going to get it. But if you already have that loan and you need to get by for whatever, a month or two until you get your next job, it's there for you. So it's just good to have that availability there. And yeah, they may charge you $100 or $200 a year just to have it open, right? Because you're not borrowing on it. But it's just good to have that just in case.
sure. Yeah, a safety net. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Safety,
sense.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's well, I know, and with I would imagine with new businesses and my business, I've been in business now 5 years, and I transitioned from a different business, and I recall 10, 12 years ago when I got started, um, what I knew was far less than what I didn't know, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I needed to ask. So having a trusted advisor like yourself for any new business to just very casually just lay out the facts. And it's just there's some fundamentals that you need to have, and it's not especially for somebody that's has always been an employee and decided they want to all of a sudden become a small business owner. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that the average employee has no clue of. So
Yeah, like
having somebody
the
like
gentleman
yourself,
yeah, the
sorry,
gentleman that like I was mentioning that was buying the business that just,
yeah,
that I met with yesterday, I spent an hour with him and pretty much I did like 90% of the talking of all the things that he needs to do. And I know it was very overwhelming and very cumbersome for him to be able to just jot down all these notes. But we're the ones that will make sure that he's following through on it all. And I told him that I know you're gonna remember maybe 10 or 15% of the stuff that we're going on, but we'll
right,
make sure you stay on target. We'll make sure that these things get implemented, and we'll make sure we will be pushing out to you. You don't need to be calling us until you're comfortable, right? Until you feel comfortable, which that may be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, because there's a lot of these things that you're only seeing, you know, once a quarter or once a year. So
right.
it's difficult to learn these things until you've been through, like yourself, until you've been through it 3, 4, 5 times in owning your business, opposed to when you were just a W-2 person collecting a check. So,
Right, right. And I've run across business owners, and in my current business, my precise fleet tracking, I work with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. And some of these are startup companies, and they're very, very small, only have a couple vehicles, what have you. And I've run into a number that don't have access to an advisor like yourself, and are doing it, kind of off the cuff, so to speak. And then when something goes sideways, like an IRS inquiry, for example, the wheels fall off the bus because they haven't had their ducks in a row, and they don't know what they don't know, and it becomes a real mess. So
yeah,
getting that advice up front, spending a little bit more money up front to get everything lined up, I think removes 90% of the stress. And every business is stressful. It doesn't matter how successful it is. There's always stress in a business. But, when you take out that stress from the IRS or from the state, wanting extra money or, what have you, it's going to make a huge difference in the overall health of the business and frankly,
correct.
health of the individual.
100%. And we do handle doing audits of the IRS, Illinois Department of Revenue, Illinois Department of Employment Security. One of the other things that I haven't mentioned yet is, in addition to us doing all this research to educate ourselves, we then push those things out to our clients via emails and letters so they're aware of what they need to be doing. And every single one of our clients knows how to be prepared for any one of these audits. There should be no surprises. There's nothing wrong with getting audited. It's just not being prepared to be audited. So
Right.
we make sure that again, like when I met with that gentleman yesterday, not that he needs to be prepared to get audited, but you need to be prepared just in case it happens, that you've got all the proper documentation that you can stand up to an audit and have no problems. We've had several audits with no changes, where they come in, they go through all of our records, we put something together. Like I like to make the auditor's job very simple and straightforward. So they'll give me a list of 20 things, and I will tab it out 1 through 20, have it all marked out, have everything in order exactly how they want it, because I want them to have a tick and tie audit. Because if they're happy with the work that I'm doing and they see that there's no problems, they sometimes don't dig into other areas. They'll be like, oh, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. The company's doing exactly what they need to. All the proper documentation is, the trial balance and everything tied to the tax returns. They're doing everything appropriately. So there may be some other areas that there are concerns when the audits happen, but they may not look at those areas if everything else looks good. So
Right. Well, right, and that's a really important aspect. I mean, some people, they either ignore the initial request from the IRS, or they challenge them and want to fight them through the process, and that just opens up more issues. And
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah,
upfront and if you got your documentation clear and you're reporting everything legitimately, and you have all everything in front of you, there should be nothing to worry about.
that's correct.
So that's awesome. Frank, thank you for all that. We're going to take a quick break here and then come back and maybe continue this conversation and maybe have a couple examples of how you've been able to be the knight in shining armor for some of your clients.
Sounds
But
good.
just want to provide the audience with a good idea of how you've been able to save the day. So if they have a need, or if they know somebody that has been in a similar predicament, they can refer you, and maybe you can add a couple more returns to your client base. So before we take the break, why don't you share your contact information? What's the best way for somebody to reach you, whether it be phone or email, etc.? Why don't you share
The
that
best
with
way
us?
to get in touch with me is to call the office number, which is 847-776-3700. And then my office manager, Melissa Anders, will answer the phone. And if I'm available, she'll patch you into me. Or if you want to set up a meeting, she's got access to my calendar. She'll put you on the calendar as well, too. So that's the best way. Just call the office number.
Repeat that number one more time.
Sure. It's 847-776-3700.
Okay. And I will put that in the show notes so everybody will be able to see that as well, and be able to reach out to you directly. All right, Frank, well, let's stick with us. And to our listeners, hang with us for a minute or so, and we'll be right back continuing with Frank Costabile from Costabile Steffens Accounting. Be right back. We certainly hope you're enjoying this week's episode, and we'll return to this week's guest in just a moment. But now a message from our sponsor, Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. If you own a fleet of vehicles, even if it's just 2 or 3 vehicles, GPS tracking is an important component for every vehicle. Here are the 5 top reasons companies invest in GPS tracking: driver safety, vehicle location, driver behavior, proof of service, and monitoring vehicle maintenance. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions can enhance your growth and profit through the use of GPS tracking technology. Reach out to Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions at www.precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com. Or call 847-865-6008. That's 847-865-6008. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. GPS tracking made simple. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, we are back. Thanks for sticking with us. I am Michael Drelichars, host of I Got a Guide podcast. Our guest today is none other than Frank Costabile from Costabile Steffens Accounting. And we are having a great conversation about his accounting firm and how he helps his clients, not only get all their financial records in line, but in case there's an IRS inquiry, he's ready to go. They're ready to provide the information to the IRS if there's any questions, and make the business owners and the individuals' lives a little easier and take that worry off their shoulders. So, Frank, thanks for joining us this week, and appreciate all the information you're able to share.
Thanks again for having me, Mike.
So, is there anything else you wanted to share regarding our conversation before the break, or do we want to chat about a couple scenarios?
No, we can go forward.
All right, cool. I didn't want to miss anything that was important for our listeners. But obviously, you've been in business for 30 years. You've seen and served an awful lot of clients, and you've probably seen some pretty interesting situations. I'd like to have you share with us a couple examples of how you've been able to come in and save the day for our clients and kind of get them on the right path and take that fear off the table.
Sure. There's 2 large ones that stick out over my 30-year career that has happened in the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years. So one of the things that we always do whenever we pick up a new client is we go back and we review the last 3 years worth of returns to see if there's any issues that we need to be concerned with. Maybe we can go back and amend those returns and get some more money for the clients.
Sure.
And the reason it's 3 years is because that's what the statute of limitations is with the IRS, is you can go back 3 years. And there were 2 clients in particular that we were able to assist. I mean, there's always small things, like especially when people do the returns themselves, there's certain things, certain deductions that they've found where you can pick up a couple $1,000s here or there. But there were 2 large ones. One was a restaurant client of ours that they had 9 restaurants. And when we went back and reviewed the last 3 years, we noticed they weren't taking advantage of what the tip credit is. And just to give you a little insight into that is when you work for a restaurant and you're paying tips, if you get a $10 tip, you just get the $10, right? Well, part of any of your wages when you get a W-2, there's what's called the FICA tax. That's Social Security and Medicare tax, which is an additional 7.65%. That's supposed to be withheld from that $10 tip. Well, it's not. So what happens is the
Hmm.
employer pays that for you. And so then when that employer files their income tax returns, they get an actual credit, not a deduction, but a credit, like as if they paid the tax themselves. So when we took a look at these 9 restaurants, we were able to go back and see that they missed out on approximately $350,000 of real money. So we went back and amended those returns, and then 6 months later, my client got a check for $350,000.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
a windfall.
it's huge. And they ended up getting audited, right? Because our government doesn't like to give those large checks away. And the audit came through clean, no change, anything. So that was a huge win for us. And that client thinks I can walk on water. He thinks I'm the best thing in the world because he was not expecting that. And the restaurant business is up and down. And this was in a time
Oh,
when the restaurants
yeah.
were struggling. So he definitely could use that money. And the
Yeah.
very sad thing about that is he's been in business for over 20 years. So he was missing out on all those other credits for all those other years.
Oh, yeah. And that's all gone at that point. You can't go back further than
3
3
years
years.
is all you can go back and get. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another
At least,
one that, go ahead, Mike.
well, at least he knows now going forward, every year he's getting the proper credits. So it's helping him every year going forward.
Right. And
Yeah.
I picked up a lot of clients from him just saying what a great job I did. So just
That's
got to do a
great.
great job for people. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
sure.
another one that was a new client to us. The prior accounting firm never tracked their basis. So what the basis is whenever you own a business, it tracks how much you put into the business, plus all the gains or losses for the business. And this client was struggling when we picked them up. And we went back and saw that the basis schedules and were never being done. And the year that we picked them up, they actually had a phenomenal year. They made over $1 million.
Hmm.
However, we went back and prepared the basis schedules since the company was created, which was over 10 years. And it took some time to do that. But
Sure.
we realized that they had suspended losses that they were reporting of somewhere around 900,000. So if their other firm would have prepared that return, they would have paid somewhere around 40% on that $1 million, 400,000. Instead, after we went back and prepared the basis schedules, they ended up only paying tax on 100,000. So we saved that client over 300 and some $1,000. So that was another huge win for us.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
and is that a common mistake that is made where they don't complete the basis schedule?
it's a little shocking. Like it's required. And
Yeah.
starting in what year are we in? 2022, you actually have to submit those basis forms to the IRS. Before, you were supposed to submit them if you had losses and you were using the losses. But in this case of the client, they had losses, but they weren't using them. So nothing was being tracked, nothing was being sent in. But now, starting in 2022, because IRS knows that there's a huge hole here with people taking losses that they shouldn't be taking. So now you have to submit those going forward. But in prior years, you weren't required.
You weren't required. Okay. So they just ignored that. Huh. Well, that's a huge win for your client and obviously a huge win for you. So now you're locked in with that client for life.
Absolutely. Some other things that we do assist with is people buying businesses, and I've got a couple of our clients selling businesses. So we go through an analysis to help make sure what makes most sense for them. Like typically when you're buying a business, you want to buy assets, and when you're selling a business, you want to sell stock. But there's a particular one that's going on right now with one of my clients that's interested in selling his business for like $30 million. And they will only do an asset sale. So when we went through the math the first time, it was going to cost him, the client, an extra $1 million to do it as an asset sale over a stock sale. If you just went purely on what they were recommending, meaning the buyer. In our last meeting that we just had on Monday this week, they kind of gave us kind of a little bit of a choice of how to do the asset allocation for the $30 million. And it turns out I don't know if they're going to accept this, but after I sat down with the client yesterday and we went through the math on it and some of the things that I specially allocated to some of the assets, we can get it where we're going to actually pay $500,000 less in taxes by doing it in asset sale if they agree to the asset allocation the way that I've got it structured.
Interesting.
And then another thing that we do to help our clients, which we're going through for a couple clients now, is, labor is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to find people. And it's very difficult to make sure that you're making a good hire as well. So we assist in that process. We will either place ads for people, or if they want to go through like a headhunter agency, we'll do the interviewing to make sure, like if they're hiring either a bookkeeper, a accountant, a controller, or a CFO, we will take the time to interview those people and go through the candidates, go through the resumes, and make sure that they're making a good choice. And we just help 2 clients within the last 30 days hire people to make sure, because the clients know, probably like yourself too, you know your business, you know how to run your business, but you may not know the right questions to be asking to make sure that these candidates are qualified to work in your industry. So.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that's good advice. Just to make sure that they're, because especially if the business owner is not a financial person, they may not know what questions to ask correctly of those individuals. Huh.
Yeah. I'll give you
That
one more
yeah.
quick story. So this is another relatively, well, it's an old client now. So this happened, I think, right when I started taking over the firm back in 2009. We picked up a new client, and this client's been around for, I don't know, 40 years. And they had a gentleman who was their controller that treated the company like it was his. So he questioned every penny that went out. He would challenge the salespeople to turn in expense reports. He made sure everybody had support, and he was phenomenal. He was fantastic. And then unfortunately he passed. And I hired another controller before we came in. And this guy, let's just say, was the complete opposite of that. And the owner thought everybody that he hired that was an accountant or a controller was going to be at this level. Well, we got in there the first year, and they were supposed to have an audit, and the records were so messed up we couldn't even do an audit. We ended up having to do a review. And we found that this gentleman, in the year we were doing alone, embezzled somewhere between 50 and 75,000. And then we went back for the last 5 years since he's been there. He started embezzling within the first 2 months that he was there. He took over $500,000 from this client.
Oh my.
Yes. So that was another challenging thing where the client didn't even know this stuff was going on, and he had another accountant that never found any of these things for the prior 5 years. So we get in there, we dig into the details, and we make sure if there's an issue, we're communicating that to the owner.
Wow. Yeah, that's shocking that it would go on for that long. That's unfortunate. Huh. So, Frank, I did want to ask you. I know you work with a lot of restaurants, and in Illinois, they're talking about changing the minimum wage for restaurant employees, and to this point, restaurant employees that get tips, they actually earn a lower wage from the restaurant. And now the state of Illinois wants to change that and pay them the standard $15 an hour minimum wage, right? That's got to be a pretty sizable impact to your restaurant owners.
That, if that passes, that would have a significant impact. Like you said, I think the rate right now is $5.15 or something like that. So to add an extra $10 to these people, I don't know how the restaurants would be able to survive, because I don't know if the last time you've been to a restaurant, but the prices are through the roof, and that's just because of the food cost. And so if they had to then add the labor cost on that, I don't know who could afford to go out and eat based on the way that it is.
Yeah,
or then maybe tipping would have to go to zero, but I don't know if that's going to happen either. Something's going to have to give.
Yeah, it seems really out of balance and unsustainable. And the reality is, in some of these restaurants, the servers can make a lot of money in tips. If they're making $15 an hour, plus all this money in tips that they typically make, I mean, they're making a great living. it's kind of shocking, and I hope it has not passed yet. Correct?
I don't think it has. I've not read, like I said, we rely on other sources to push that information out to me, and I have not read anything that's been passed yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I hope there's a change of heart there, because it really could make have a devastating impact to the restaurant owners throughout the state, and that's not right. We have to be balanced with their laws. You want to help out the employees, but you also have to take care of the business owners that are employing these people, because then,
absolutely.
restaurants close, now the employees have no job, so it doesn't matter what they pay them.
100%. I mean, you hear about a lot. We've had, fortunately, unfortunately, a lot of Department of Labor audits too, right? To make sure, um, people are working overtime and getting paid their time and a half, and that,
Sure.
they're making sure they're getting paid. And so they don't care. Department of Labor doesn't care if you're paying these people cash. The IRS cares, but they don't. They just want to make sure the employees are being paid, and they don't care. They're not looking to find these employers. They just want to make sure everybody's getting paid what they should get paid, because they don't want to find these employers, because if the employers go out of business or can't afford the paint, then now they just laid off, like you said, 100 or 200 people that are working for that restaurant. So
Right. Yeah. The impact, the effect of that could be more devastating than the benefits they receive by making these laws and changing these laws. So
absolutely.
hopefully they straighten that out here, and all continues to work correctly. Um, well, that's great information. So, Frank, what type of businesses? So, let's focus on businesses now. Obviously,
Sure.
you do a lot with restaurant businesses. Is this an area that you focus your practice, or is it just kind of happens that you have a bunch of restaurants as your clients?
Yeah, the restaurants just came to us. We have somewhere between 15 and 20 restaurants that we do all that I was talking about: monthly bookkeeping, sales tax returns, process the payroll, produce those financial statements, do a year-end tax planning and year-end prep. Those are ones that are just come to us just through word of mouth. So I would say that of the 400 clients, that's a pretty small. That's like 5%.
Hmm.
Um, Most of the clients are in manufacturing, distributing, construction. We have a nice niche in the construction industry. The
Okay.
reason that is my father, when he started with, I think it was Pete Marwick, which is now KPMG. He was there 5 years in the construction sector, then went to go be a controller for a contractor, and then started this practice and brought that contractor over to us, which we still have. So they've been in business for over 40 years. And
Hmm.
in that industry, it's very incestuous, where everybody knows everybody. And
Sure.
so the referrals just come, and we have probably, out of those 400 clients, I would say probably somewhere between 50 to 60 are in the construction or construction related industry. And so we get referrals all the time, not just from the people in the construction industry that's working there, but also from like the bank or the bonding companies when they want to give a bond to somebody, and that company is not even producing work in process schedules. That's where we get involved. And believe it or not, we've been brought in to clients that have been around for 30, 40 years. These aren't small clients. These are clients doing 20, 30, 40 million in revenue, and they've never done a work in process schedule. So they don't know how they're making on individual jobs. They don't know if their estimators are doing a good job. They don't know if their project managers are doing a good job. So one of our roles there is we teach them, we set up the WIPs, and we help them design the software so they can do it and make good decisions to grow their business and know if they're making money. So then they could also do good evaluations of their employees.
Sure. It makes sense. That seems to be an integral part between you know just doing business and generating a profit, and knowing where you need to adjust. And if somebody's making a mistake and it's costing you thousands of dollars a month, you want to know
Right.
that.
Absolutely. The WIP is the number one thing. So I don't know how contractors would be able to run without that. I mean, that's their lifeblood. You know what I'm saying? I bid a job. Did I bid it right? How did I do on the job? They've got to track that some way.
But the other thing that's shocking is that every accounting firm isn't requiring that like you are.
Well, they've got to be. Construction is like a niche industry. And so
Hmm.
what happens is somebody starts a contractor or a company, and this guy's been their accountant forever. So they're like, "Can you do it?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, I can do it," not knowing the niche to the industry, right?
Sure.
So they don't go to we go to the Illinois CPA Society construction conference every year. We go to other construction CPEs to make sure that, we're well adversed of what the new changes are. And we've been doing this since the company's inception, since 1979. Do you know what I'm saying? My dad taught me, and then I teach new
Sure,
people that
sure.
come in. And so it's just inbred in what we do. But there's lots of firms that don't do that, and they shouldn't be doing it. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't know the ins and outs to it.
Right, right. So they don't realize that that's an important component because they don't have an experience in that area, and you
Exactly.
obviously
And
have
if,
that
right,
experience.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So that sounds like that's a really good niche for you. Is any construction or anyone in the trades, could be
Anyone in
plumbing.
the trades is an excellent referral for us. Yeah. Whether they're a GC or a sub or electrical or plumbing, underground,
You
water,
does it matter
sewer.
union or non-union? Does that
Union
make a
and
difference?
non-union does not matter. We can work through those as well too. So
Okay. All right. All right. Super. All right. Well, we'll definitely get the word out and make sure that their audience knows that if you happen to own a construction company, any company in the trades, Constable and Steffens is a great company to lean on as your trusted advisor. So, well, Frank, why don't you share your contact information again so that those companies can reach out and call you?
sure. My phone number again is 847-776-3700. That's 847-776-3700. And that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay, so that's right in the office, and then they'll route the call to you and be able to answer their questions and serve them. Cool. Well,
Yep.
that's great. Anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up the show, Frank?
No, I think I'm good, Mike. And I just want to thank you again very much for the opportunity to speak with you. So,
Yeah, that's great. And it's a great conversation, and I really think that you've been able to provide some really good, valuable information, and hopefully our listeners are a little smarter because of it, and reach out to you with their questions. So please reach out to Frank at Costabile and Steffens Accounting, 847-776-3700, and make sure you mention that you heard about him here on I Got a Guy podcast. It's an important way for us to, Frank and I network together, and it's just how networking works. We like to know where our calls or our referrals are coming from, and that's how business grows. So it's a really important component. So as we wrap up the show here, I just want to throw in a little plug for Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions, because I actually work with the same batch of customers. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions provides GPS tracking to companies that own commercial vehicles. And when you think about commercial vehicles on the road, there's a lot of construction trucks on the road, whether it be HVAC, plumbing, electrical, general contracting, drywall, etc. And these trucks all need to have GPS tracking inside. If there's a logo on the outside, GPS tracking should be on the inside. Not only to know where your vehicles are, but there's a lot of theft of vehicles, and the business owners need to know where their vehicles are. They need to be able to dispatch and reroute and just maintain control over these really expensive assets. Even a small van, a small little van is a $40,000 vehicle. You got another $50,000 or $60,000 worth of parts and equipment inside, and then you have employees in there. They're really big financial components of these businesses, and so a business owner needs to be able to see where these assets are, and manage them, and make sure they're being utilizing them in the most efficient way possible. It really helps the bottom line. And so, if you happen to own a business that has these commercial vehicles, we would love to have a conversation with you. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions can be reached at 847-865-6008. That's 847-865-6008. We can have a detailed conversation and see how it might fit and benefit your business. So we'd love to have a conversation with you and see how we can help. So again, Frank, thanks you so much for being part of the show this week. And I encourage all of our listeners to reach out to Frank and get their accounting questions answered and see how we can serve you better. And then we'll be with you again next week. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon. Make it a great week. Take
thanks,
care.
Mike.
Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. For past podcasts and more information, go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com. Please share this podcast on your social media feeds and tune in again next week to I Got a Guy podcast.